Hi everyone, it's Jeanette here from the Sewing Studio with, I'm going to call this a techniques video, maybe an ideas, take your pick. But if you remember, we did this beautiful Spring Fever quilt block, which was from Pam and Nikki Lintott, Pam and Nikki Quilts. And right from the beginning, we thought actually it would make a lovely block once we've done it to turn it into a cushion. And I know one of our viewers made a comment to go, I would turn that into a pillow, or what we would call in the UK a cushion. And I think you must have read my script, because that's exactly what we were planning. So I thought I would share this with you today, and I thought we would also tackle one of those other things that people are a little bit frightened of sometimes, and that's buttonholes. So I thought we'll have a look, because I'm thinking this is quite a large cushion. This is going to be 20 inches. It's quite a big cushion just to have an envelope back. I tend to find that with envelope backs, I like a bit more of a closure to it, because you've got that sort of wider space, if you like, for sort of things to sort of not gape exactly, but you know, they can be a little bit loose on the back. So I'm thinking that I may do a button closure on this. So I was thinking that would be a good opportunity to show you buttonholes. Now we're just going to be doing very basic buttonholes with the buttonhole foot and a buttonhole stitch on our machine, just to get people a bit confident if you haven't given it a go and you would like to just hopefully get your buttons out and your buttonhole foot and give it a go. So first of all, let me just talk to you a little bit about what I've done here. Now with that block, it finished at 16 inches. So as I said, we're going to turn this into a 20-inch cushion. So what I've done is I've just cut some 2.5-inch strips, and I've put a border around that to get to our 20 inches. And we thought that really liked, I mean, one, it sort of shows off that lovely sort of Spring Fever block, and anybody that's not seen that video, we will put a link in the description below so you can go and have a watch of that. But I loved doing that block. It was a really nice, fun one to do. And this also replicates how Pam and Nikki finished their quilt. So we thought that would look really good. Now I've just done a little bit of quilting on it ahead of time, because I wanted to focus on the buttonhole bit and talk to you a little bit about how I'm going to finish this cushion. And all I've done is what I call echo quilting around these shapes here in the background areas. I've not done any quilting in this yellow. I sort of felt that sort of popped the yellow forward a little bit more. And then I've just done some, what I call squiggle, that's not the official title of it, some squiggly free motion quilting, just in the background, the borders. And I've done some in the centre, but you don't really see the stitching in the centre, but you know, for real, you do see a little bit of texture there. But anytime you've got a pattern fabric, a lot of that quilting does tend to sort of disappear a little bit into the pattern of the fabric. So I've just sort of done that, and I just layered that on a piece of wadding and did that. And then once I finished all the quilting, then I just put a piece of lining fabric on the back, and that just sort of hides all the workings behind, and it makes the whole of the inside of the cushion really nice and neat. So I've prepped all of that ahead of time, and you can see I've just sort of secured that lining piece in with a little tacking stitch just close to the edge there. So that's the front of our cushion made. That would also make quite a nice little table topper, wouldn't it, quilt? And I've cut out my pieces from the back. Now what I've decided to do is use, I had some of this fat quarter of this paisley left. So that's actually going to be the bottom flap of my cushion. So that's going to go, if we turn this over, that's going to go like so. And then I'm going to do the little cuff again that we did on the little Christmas cushion, a little scrappy Christmas cushion. So I should say this piece of fabric, I just got as big a piece as I could out of what I had left of the fat quarter. So that ended up being 13 inches by 20.5 for that piece. Took some more of the background fabric, and I think this is 14 3/4, if my memory serves me. Let me just remeasure that to make sure I'm giving you correct information. Yes, that is 14 3/4. When I did the Christmas one, I think I said at the time this would make a really good button band. So to do the cuff, this is exactly like we do when we do pillowcases, put cuffs on pillowcases. I've got the smaller bit here, and I'm going to line up, I'm just going to make sure, right sides together. I'm going to line up those two raw edges, and I'm going to put some pins in there. I'm going to use my slightly bigger pins. One more there. And then we're going to take the bottom of this and we're going to roll it up. So this is the larger piece of fabric, so this is going to be the top flap of the cushion. And we're going to roll it up to about halfway. Now, if I can grab, have I got a clip? No, not easily at hand, so that's okay. We'll just put if you've got these little, the little wonder clips and the little binding clips, they work really well there, but for the moment I'll just stick a pin. I did have some here, I think I've tidied them away. So that's just to hold that out the way, and then we're going to bring this bottom section, and this is the bit with the interfacing, so this is the smaller piece. We're going to wrap it over the top, and then we're going to pin again. So we're sort of making, I think I called it last time, a fabric sausage roll. And then we're going to take that to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch all along this long edge, just being mindful that we need to keep this rolled up fabric out the way. We don't want to be stitching that into the seam. So we're going to take those pins out from the side, and then we're going to reach in and just pull that roll out. Now this will be a bit stiffer because we've got interfacing in there, so. And there we go. So we've got a nice cuff that's gone on there, and we've got no raw edges. So we're going to take that to the iron, give it a nice press, and then we'll have a look at doing the buttonhole. Now, before I put the buttonhole, the one thing I would just do is take that to the machine and just do a little top stitch along that edge there and along this bottom, and it just helps to finish that off. It's an optional step, but I think it just gives it a little bit more of a finished look. So, but for the moment, I'm going to set that aside because I'm not going to try my buttonhole out yet on my real piece. I always do a practice piece first, just to make sure that I'm happy with how it's all coming out. So I'm just going to put that to one side. So once again, that will be a little bit of homework for me for later. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of fabric here. So what I've done is I've just mocked up the same thing, roughly the same size in terms of width, obviously slightly different in length, but just to give you an idea of how to do it. So one thing, there's a few tips when we're working with buttonholes, and the first thing to remember is a buttonhole will stitch in most instances. All the machines I've ever used and come across will start at the front of the buttonhole and work backwards. So we need to bear that in mind. Now what I would do for this, depending on how many buttons I'm going to put on this, if I was going to put 2, I would sort of find somewhere sort of fairly equidistant and put them. If you're going to do odd numbers, I tend to start with the centre button and then measure out from there. And then you can make sure, so for this one, for example, if we were going to go and do 3, we would just measure our piece. So that's 15 inches. So 7.5 would be my centre point. So I'm going to mark here actually, along the edge at 7.5. And then I'm going to say I'm going to want my buttonhole about 3/4 of an inch from the edge. Now you just need to bear in mind the area you've got to work with there. So that's going to limit me to the size of the button I can put on and the size of the buttonhole. So there's my 7.5 inch mark. So I'm going to come down. Actually, I'm going to go 1/2 inch because I'm thinking I might run out of room for 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just finding my centre mark again. I might put a pin in there actually because I've got red on red. And I'm finding that a little bit hard to see once I've got the ruler there. There we are. So I'm going to come down 1/2 inch and I'm just going to mark. So that's where the front of my buttonhole is going to be. Actually, let's try the blue on there. That might show up better. Yeah. So that's where the front of my buttonhole is going to start. Now what I tend to do is sort of put my centre line there as well. So I've got like a little bit of a crosshair. Let me just show you that under the close-up. I've got a little bit of a crosshair and I've got that gap, that space to work with to get the buttonhole in. So the next fearful thing is the buttonhole foot. Let's have a little look at that. So the buttonhole foot looks like that, which is what really terrifies people sometimes because they look at that and think, no, there's no way I'm going to use that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, because this one, yours may not look exactly like this. This has got something they call a stabiliser on the bottom. Now, I tend to take that off and it literally just goes through that little slot there. I find I don't tend to need that when I'm using cottons. So, you know, let's get rid of that bit and then that's automatically made that foot a little less scary to begin with. So I'm just going to put this button in. Now, one thing you do have to bear in mind is this has got a size limit on how big a button you can put in there. So you may find that you've got a button that's too big, in which case it's a slightly different case because you have to do sort of more of a manual buttonhole. We won't cover that in this video. I think we'll just sort of keep it simple for a minute to get people a bit more confident with buttonholes before we do anything a little bit. Now, all I'm just doing is closing that up. This one's a bit stiff because it's new. We've been given a new machine here to use in the studio. It's the Janome Memorycraft 9480 QC Professional. So this is all sort of a little bit stiff. I think that will do it. That just holds the button in. So that's going to tell the machine how big we want the buttonhole to be. So that scary bit at the back is just to hold the button. So I'm going to now put this on. Now this is just the same as a normal foot. I'm actually going to turn it around here. See this little bar here? That's our little snap-on bar that all our other little feet have. So sort of this is the sort of the foot version, if you like, of the buttonhole foot. And we're just going to clip that with that bar there onto the foot. And it's just the same sort of drop on, click on, drop off, click on insertion that you do with any. So we're going to take our marked buttonhole with our buttonhole foot. And we're going to put that on the machine and we're going to give a little buttonhole a go. Now I'm just going to explain something. I've actually had to turn my fabric round, and this is why we always do a test one, because I was actually going to run out of fabric for the buttonhole, for the size button I've put in. So I've folded my piece of fabric the other way to give me more room. So I've just done that, relined that up again. If I've done it, other people are going to do it. So if you do it, you need to sort of realise that that may happen, and this is why I always do a test piece to see what room I've got here to work with. I've put my needle down into my crosshairs that I've marked on the fabric. I found the centre point. I've gone 1/2 inch back from the fold. We've reset the buttonhole stitch and off we go. Now what it's done there is that bar that we've pulled down has hit the back of that button, so it knows now that's the size of our button. So that has come forward and done a satin stitch in effect over the first side, so that's the left-hand side of the buttonhole. So there's our buttonhole. Now what I'm going to do is put a pin just at the back, just along the back of that bar, just like that. And then we're going to get our seam ripper and carefully we're going to insert it in the fabric between those two stitch lines. And then we're just going to, I'm trying to do this and hold it fairly still so you can see. And what that pin does is it stops our seam ripper going through those stitches at the back there. So we can take the pin out there, and there you can see we've got a nice little buttonhole. Now all I would normally do is just go in with a small pair of scissors and just neaten up any of those sort of pokey bits, but just being very careful not to cut through any of our stitches that are making up those sidebars. So literally it's just sort of taking out those threads that are poking out. So that's our buttonhole. So I hope you give buttonholes a go, even if it's like, say, just do a few practice ones and just get the gist, or, you know, sort of do it on something small to begin with, a little pouch or something that you just sort of do a button closure. But once you get the hang of it and once you sort of understand that foot a little bit more, they're a lot easier than people think. So I hope you give it a go. If you do, let us know how you get on. We'd be very interested to hear how you get on with your buttons. So thank you very much for joining me here today, and I hope you'll join us here again next time in the sewing studio.